favor. Look at your neighbor. Look at them right in the eye. Say, you were made for this. Now look the other way. Don't let them get out of this. Look them right in the eye and say, you were made for this. Lesson number 1 is that prayer is doing something. Now, if you're writing that down, you can see it in your notes, but I want you to underline the word is. Because many times when life happens and things go on in our lives, we do everything we can to fix it, and then when nothing works, we say, well, I guess I can pray. But prayer actually is doing something. That should be where we start. You should be praying for the challenges that you will face in the future. And Nehemiah was ready for his challenge because he had prayed. I want you to look with me at Nehemiah chapter 1, and we're going to begin reading in verse 3. Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 3, it says, "They said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, I," meaning Nehemiah, he says, "I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven." So there the prayer begins, all right? So we see that the destruction had happened. So there's a reason he's praying, but look, keep watching with me. Verse 5, "Then I said, Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments. Let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying." Who's the servant? It's Nehemiah. He's praying before you day and night. His prayers didn't cease. He was praying for the servants and he was praying for the people of Israel. And he says this, "I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. We've acted wickedly toward you. We've not obeyed the commands, decrees, and laws you gave your servant Moses." So we're going to see that he began to pray day and night, and prayer allowed him to hone in on his purpose, on what he was to do. If you begin to read this book, which I would encourage you, go back and read this story for yourself and see what Nehemiah was able to do. But if you read it for yourself, you're going to find that 12 different times in the book, he knelt and he prayed. He petitioned God, and then finally, when it was time, he stood up and he said, somebody's got to do this, it might as well be me. He didn't have to do it. He had a pretty comfortable position working for the king, but he was willing to risk his life and his position to advocate for his people. And he didn't let position stop him from doing what was right, and through prayer, he was ready when that moment came. Here's the thing, students in the room. As you head into school, who are you ministering to? Who needs you? It's very easy to go into school and just say, man, I'm there to, find some friends, hang out, have some fun, and make my grades and get through. But you can look at it and say, man, I want to make a difference to those around me. I want to be Christ to my friends. I want to reach out to those who are needing some help, who are needing direction. Teachers, as you walk in to the many challenges you're going to face this year, even more than usual in recent times, but how can you love some of those more challenging students? How can you be prepared for what's coming that you don't know that's coming? You can by praying now to prepare yourself for what's going to come. If you're anyone else in this room, this applies to us. If you're not an educator, maybe you just work somewhere, you have a business, whatever you do, the truth still remains that we can pray and we can prepare for what God wants to ask us in the future, for the challenges that may come in the future. Nehemiah thought he would go in and take care of things. He said, I'm going to be the guy. But if you actually look, there's 4 months that go on between chapter 1 and chapter 2. 4 months. And in those 4 months, day and night, he prayed. Preparing. Prayer is doing something. And that is why the conversation with the king went so well in chapter 2, is because he had already fought much of the battle on his knees in prayer. So as we get to chapter 2, you can look at this with me. Go to chapter 2, verse 4. He's going to get the opportunity to present his request to the king. Again, like Courtney said, if he was to make the king mad, he could be killed, he could lose his position. But look at verse 4. It says, Nehemiah said, "The king said to me, what is it you want?" And watch, here's what he says again. "Then I prayed to the God in heaven." the first thing he did was pray. Now, in this moment, he didn't take a 4-day prayer retreat. He didn't say, hey, let me come back in a week and I'll talk to God and then I'll let you know. He had already been praying. And because of that, he was in tune with God. And he basically could go, hey, God, what's the answer here? What do we want to tell him in this moment? They're working as a team at this point. You know, as we're talking about this youth space that we're trying to get ready, and there's lots of construction going between plumbing and electrical and drywall and all those kinds of things, and I'm just going to be honest with you, there's a reason I'm a pastor, not a contractor. I do not know the terms. I don't know the lingo. Sometimes they ask questions, and I'm like, huh? What are you talking about? But the good news is I have the right people to ask. Dustin Struby, our plumber, goes to church, and I have his number right there ready. Jeff Smith, who's doing a lot of the contracting, I have his number. And when I don't have a question that I can't answer, I can easily call them, and I can say, hey, what do you think about this? What should we do? And the thing is, because we've been in close contact, because they understand what's going on, I don't have to explain it to them every time. I don't have to call them and say, okay, we've got this area that we demolished and we're remodeling and we need... No, they already know all of that. So I can call them on the phone and just say, hey, what do we want to do about this? And it's the same. As Nehemiah is that connected to God, he already knows what we're going through. He already knows what we're dealing with. But because he had been praying constantly, he was in tune with God, that when the moment came, all he had to do was to go, hey, God, what do you think about this? It was that easy to make the answer. And sometimes we begin to think God is just up there somewhere in space, and because we're not in close contact with him, because we're not having intimate moments with him, we don't think to call on him in those moments when challenges arise. It's as simple as a phone call to Jeff, as a phone call to Dustin, just to go, hey, God, what do you think about this? What's the answer here? With Nehemiah, the conversation went very well, better than he had hoped. Not only did the king agree to let him go rebuild the wall and take care of things, he put his full support behind him. That in itself was a miracle that was only achieved by prayer. My last thing would be this: don't wait until the crisis to start praying.